Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Free. I'm Ryan. I'm the pastor here. So good to be with you on this Easter Saturday night. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Easter. If you're new with us, I want to remind you this is a community for addicts, loved ones of addicts, and spiritual refugees. Is my mic all right? Is it hit me? Okay. We got a new mic, everybody. Hey, we're a community for addicts, loved ones of addicts, spiritual refugees. And what we do here is break the silence of addiction and create space for healing, recovery, and spiritual connection. Welcome to all of you on YouTube, Facebook, our church online, the website, wherever you're tuning in. We want to welcome you. If you are on Facebook right now, I encourage you to hit the share button. You never know.
Hold on.
Whoa,
Everybody,
whoa.
I've been given a task.
You have?
I've been given a task. Everybody, happy birthday
goodness.
to you. Happy birthday to you.
Love you too, bro.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank you all. Thanks for that, man. You have a beautiful singing voice. Should do that more often. All right, y'all know I'm all out of my element. It is my birthday today, so it's even better to be with you all tonight. I'm so glad you're here in the house and online. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hey, I want to let you know, where's Derek? Is Derek right in front of me? Derek, we got a book study coming up this Wednesday. Now, we have something like 20, 30 people signed up. It's on Zoom and in person, so all of you from different states. I know we've got Florida, Arizona, Texas, North Carolina, Washington, all of you from other states. You can join us if you want on Zoom, but you got to let us know. It's starting this week. It's from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Wednesday nights. The book Tattoos on the Heart. The Power of Boundless Compassion, which is one of my favorite books I've read. It's by Father Gregory Boyle. Man, it's just good stories in this book, life-changing stuff. So if you want to be a part of it, you still got a couple of days left. You can let us know. Derek and I are going to be co-leading this, and we're looking forward to it. So shoot us an email if you want to be part of that. All right, y'all, we are going to jump. We're going to jump into things tonight. We're doing these things called A Letter to Your Addiction. We're doing them monthly. We started these way back in Advent, which is the 4 weeks leading up to Christmas. Now here we are at Easter. We're still doing these. My boy Adam Vibe Gunton wrote this letter to his addiction, and I want you to take a look.
My name's Adam Vibe Gunton. I've been clean and sober since November 6th, 2017, and this is my letter to my addiction. Dear addiction, it's been over 3 years since we broke up or have even spoken. That broken part of me has had time to heal away from you. Remember the first time you snuck into my life? With whispers when I was 12, asking, you want to know what it's like to get high? You took me from cocaine to weed to perks and then X. You were showing me what life was about, and I kept asking you what's next. Everything that happened as I grew up, you were there for me. When Chuck shot himself, we got closer because I wouldn't let anyone else be. You were right there with a new embrace in those Oxy 80s. They took away the pain and they masked the shame and guilt. I just wish you would have been honest and told me where you were taking me. And how all the pain you took would all be given back tenfold, and I'd be stuck with you, trying to leave you, silently crying for help from anyone who would listen. But you told me if I left, you'd find me, and I felt so secure with you. You would apologize for all the times you left me with battered eyes and would promise this time would be different. And I listened. After the motorcycle accident when my head got split, Nicole got hurt, and they charged me with a crime I didn't commit, you were right there for me with heroin. For the whole 6 months it took until I heard the word acquit. By then, it was too late to quit. You had me waking up reaching for a pack with a spoon. I forgot who I was because I was caught up in love with you. You taught me how to depend on something every minute of every day to make it through. But now I think about, talk about, and depend upon God more than I ever did you. I'd call you the devil, but I know you're just a minion in his game. And I don't blame you for being you and doing what you do. I don't even hate you. I thought all my friends abandoned me, hated me, and left me with no one else to talk to. But I wrote all of them letters too to amend what you made me do. Through some tears, hugs, and expressions of love, I learned after all those years they never abandoned me. They were forced to abandon you. I've had time to realize the true gift you are for someone like me. You picked the wrong one from this generation. I'm embracing the experiences you gave me to warn the future about you. I'm calling others who truly knew you to stand with drawn swords. The army against you grows daily, and we refuse to allow this anymore. Recovering from our own battles, we rise together to win this war. I say, dear addiction, because God replaced the fear from you with faith in Him. Purpose and mission as my driving force. Not from resentment towards you, but an overwhelming sense of gratitude I never would have known without you. So, dear addiction, I forgive you for all that you did to me. But my God turned your evil into good through our story. And I am here to show others it is up to us to change the course of history.
Thank you, Adam Vibe Gunton. He's the founder of Recovered on Purpose. You can check out the good work he's doing with Recovered on Purpose. Thank you, Adam, for sharing that powerful letter with us. And like I said, y'all, if you want to share this message, you can hit the share button, because you never know who that's going to speak to, that we actually can have new life. We actually do recover. Life can be made new again. Speaking of life being made new, it is Easter, but like every Saturday night, we are going to start with celebrations, because it's how we start here at Free. So I want y'all to take a couple of minutes. We'll do it in the house too for all of you. If you're online, take a couple of minutes and write them in the comments. The good things happening in life, the celebrations, the sobriety anniversaries, birthdays, all the new things that happen in our lives that we sometimes skip over. Put them in the comments. Get vulnerable, because this community wants to celebrate with you. All right, take a couple minutes, put them in the comments, and we'll be right back.
Hello world, wake me up to another good morning, time to go. Got that smile upon my face, 'cause there's excitement in the chase, this I know. Yeah, I'm going for the ride and find myself, I am alive, and I soar. Still I run toward the wind and let the challenge draw me in, 'cause I want more. Oh, we are all looking for adventure. 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 Oh, wake up heart and wake up mind, and see the world is yours to find. And with every passing day there's more, calling you out to explore. Get up and go. There is joy found in the race, and I feel it in the place where I'm free. And I simply can't deny it, that I feel adventure calling out to me. Yeah, we are all looking for adventure. We are all looking for adventure. We are all looking for adventure. We are all and I was meant to be. I'm living free, living free.
God has changed me into a new man, and it is awesome. That celebration right there.
We see it all the time, brother. Yeah, all right, we got one more. I know the online audience is back, but
I'm celebrating our anchor donor for the new building fundraising campaign that gave a big fat check tonight.
Oh, baby.
yeah, can I say that online? David was celebrating an anchor donor that gave a substantial check tonight, big fat check in his words, for our new building campaign. So, woo, good news. Thank you for sharing that with us, David. Thank you for everyone for participating in that. Shall we celebrate
big
some other
deal.
good
I mean,
news?
look
It
at-
is.
Everybody, it's so good to see you, and it makes me a little nervous. Woo! Seeing everybody in the house. Thanks for joining us. Pretty special to celebrate you.
It is. I'm glad y'all are here. It's fun.
It's fun.
Shall we celebrate? Let's do this.
Dan and Cindy, celebrating my 3rd week in my new calling, serving as a case manager. What a gift for me to be of service in my community.
All
Awesome,
right,
Cindy.
Dan
Good
and
to see you
Cindy.
earlier tonight,
Cindy.
too.
Is my mic still on? Still on? Okay, good. Molly Ann King says, bridges are being rebuilt in relationships. Thanks be to God for my patience for waiting for them to come back to me. All right,
Good
we'll
stuff, Molly
celebrate
Ann.
that with you, Molly. Glad you're here tonight.
Hey, Tom. He says, thankful that my son will have 1 year of continuous sobriety on April 6th.
That
Thank
there
you,
is
God.
awesome news. Thank you, Tom, for sharing that
Yeah.
with this community. Sherry Billington Boucher. So this is my mom, y'all. My mom and Joe, her new husband, are in town tonight for like the weekend. Celebrating the first time I met you 39 years ago and held you in my arms. I think she's talking about me. I'm going to celebrate that.
Not Joe, no.
Glad y'all are here.
Yeah. Gina says, I'm thankful for this community. Despite sobriety or not in my spouse's life, I'm choosing joy.
There you go, Gina.
Yep.
We're going to celebrate that with you. We're glad you're part of this community. Hallie says, celebrating seeing my sister, brother-in-law, nieces, and nephew for the first time in over a year.
It's a big
That's
deal.
awesome, Hallie. Congratulations. All right, do we got a couple more?
Suzanne from Arizona, celebrating the resurrection of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, this weekend. Also, my husband Kenny is healing great from his surgery.
All
Yeah,
right,
good.
Suzanne, glad you're here.
I think Ricky's the last one.
Okay, Ricky will be our last one. Ricky, all the way down from Texas, going to be joining us here in a few weeks. Says, woke up today blessed and sober. Even got my wife watching with me tonight. Love
Awesome.
y'all. Ricky, glad you're here. Ricky's wife, glad you're here too. I'm blanking on your name, but so glad y'all are here. Okay, are we good? Thank you, Tammy. All right, y'all, it is Easter, which means we celebrate new life, which means we recognize God's hope is active in the world, which means we're going to start with a little song tonight because I want us to get a bit centered. Because sometimes hope is subtle. So take a look at this song, the images, and let it center you on why we are gathered here this evening. Take a look.
Behold, I make all things new. Behold, I make all things new. Behold, I make all things new. Let there be light. Let there be light. God unseen is taking form. God unseen is taking form. God unseen is taking form. Let there be life. Let there be life. The first and last is searching for. The first and last is searching for. The first and last is searching for. Becoming life, becoming life. Behold, I make all things new. Behold, I make all things new. Behold, I make all things new. Let there be light. Let there be light.
All right, if we could get some lights up, and there we go. Thank you, Simon, for working the lights tonight. So listen, y'all, here's what I know about this new life stuff. 4 things. The first thing is it can be really confusing. The second thing is about new life, it can raise all sorts of questions. Third, you can't always grasp it in the moment. And fourth, it always emerges from places of darkness. Is it true? You know that last week, in fact, for the last several days here at Free, this community has experienced some heaviness. And we talked about some of this heaviness last week, didn't we? I mean, this community has experienced things like relapse, suicide, darkness, total despair, total brokenness, hopelessness, and another mass shooting here in Colorado, just in our neighboring town of Boulder, where 10 people were gunned down in a grocery store while doing something as simple as picking out their groceries. You know, one day this week I was driving my little girls to school, and they were getting out of the car, and they were putting their backpack straps on. And as they were getting out, one of them said to me right before they closed the door, she said, "Poppy, what if it happens at our school?" Yeah, heavy, right? And see, when I met with Lindsay earlier this week, our guest storyteller, y'all are going to meet Lindsay here in a minute. She's going to share a story with you. And when I was meeting with Lindsay this week to talk about the theme and to talk about what Easter is and to talk about hope and what stories of hope she would share tonight, I said to Lindsay, I said, man, this Easter, it just feels a little bit different. Because Easter is supposed to be celebratory, and I believe that. We should be celebrating on Easter. It's why we're here tonight. Easter is about the new thing that God is doing in the world. Easter is about hope, and I believe it. But see, sometimes hope seems really subtle and quiet. And this year it seems a bit more subtle, doesn't it? And the thing is, I don't want to miss it. And I don't want you to miss it either. You know, Kristen Woodman Miller, she wrote a letter to the Boulder survivors. Crystal is a friend of Tammy's, my wife's, and they were former college roommates. And Crystal she's a survivor of the Columbine High School shooting that happened 21 years ago, just here down the street. And she wrote a letter to the survivors, and she read this letter in front of the Boulder Memorial just a few days ago, and every major news station here in Denver picked it up. Now, since the Columbine shooting, Crystal helped form the Triumph Over Tragedy program on the On-Site Foundation. And she's doing some great work, but I want to read to you some of this letter. I won't read the whole thing. It's a bit lengthy, but you can Google this letter later. I just want to read a few lines because I think it has everything to do with Easter and new life and hope emerging from places of darkness. She said, "Dear Boulder survivors, you may be numb with shock in the chaos of this moment. I know that though the immediate danger has passed, you no longer feel safe. Your innocence and security have been stolen. I know you feel as if it might all crush you at any moment. I know it feels impossible, but I promise this is not the end. Hope is patient. Hope will wait. And hope will bear you up and carry you steadily forward." And it's true, isn't it? Hope is sometimes subtle. It's quiet. It's surprising. It'll sneak up on you. Let it sneak up on you. It's a good thing. I promise you, it's a good thing. Let hope sneak up on you. Just twice this week, in the last couple of days, I was taken back. I was stopped in my tracks by subtle moments of hope. Just this week. You know, it was just a couple days ago, I walked in here to Free. And it was a particularly challenging afternoon. And Amanda Berry, if you're watching, I know you're not here, but I think you're watching. Amanda Berry was sitting here with Kavita, and they were doing 12-step work. And I don't always ask this question. By the way, I'm not breaking anonymity. She gave me permission to share this. And she was, by the way, Amanda was one of our guest storytellers here just a few weeks ago, if you might remember that. And I don't always ask, but I said, "Amanda, how many days sober are you now?" And she looked up with one of those subtle smiles and she says, "I've got 80 days today." And I'm thinking to myself, how in the heck did that happen? I mean, Danny, do you remember 80 days ago, somewhere around there when Amanda Berry walked in? Here we are behind the coffee bar. She walks in, not a lot of hope going on, wondering if new life is possible, wondering what new life looks like in the midst of this mess and darkness. And now here she is working with another woman, doing some 12-step work, doing the interior work, experiencing 80 days sober. Yeah, talk about hope. Some of y'all know exactly what that subtle hope what it looks like. Wednesday evening, we gathered here, 6 of us gathered right here in this room for the free recovery team, the brand new free recovery team. The meeting started at 6:30. I was a little late because I was meeting with another couple in the back, and so I showed up to the meeting about 7. And so I joined kind of quietly. I tried to be quiet. And Derek, our team lead, is casting a vision with this new free recovery team. And y'all, what he said was so simple and so profound. Talk about subtle hope. He's casting this vision and he says, "Man, addicts and alcoholics have been given this permission to isolate over the last year." And he says, "Y'all know what kills us faster than anything, don't you? Isolation. And now all of a sudden we're being told we can come back out, but the thing is, so many of us, we don't know how to do it. And it's like we're brand new in our recovery, and it's like so many of us are lost." And he said, this team, this free recovery team, is going to recover the lost. I mean, it gave me goosebumps just thinking about it right now. Subtle moments of hope. Listen, if you are sitting here thinking to yourself, if you're feeling lost, broken, wondering if things could ever be put back together again, Let Easter catch you by surprise. And I get it, y'all. The hope might be so quiet. It's so subtle. But don't miss the new thing that God is doing in your midst. I promise you it's there. And if new life, if resurrection is a little hard for you to believe, if new life raises for you more questions than it does answers, my friends, you are in good company. Because I want to remind you of the Easter story. But before we get to the Easter story, we are going to read it together. Before we get there, I want to remind you of what happened the week leading up to Easter 2,000 years ago. Do you remember Jesus? He was riding into Jerusalem. And the people, they were completely hopeless. They were full of despair. They were tired of the empire, the Roman Empire, stepping on their necks. They were tired. They wanted a new king. They wanted a new emperor. They wanted something new to happen. And so here they are in Jerusalem waving their palm branches. In the church we call last Sunday Palm Sunday, right? And so they're waving their palm branches. And they're expecting Jesus to come riding in on a war horse with soldiers behind him and with swords on each side of the horse. And what does Jesus come riding in on? Come riding in on a donkey. Nothing says weakness like riding into Jerusalem on an ass. And the people, man, you know they are waiting for Jesus to start kicking some Roman butt. Like this must just be a show. He's going to turn things in just a minute. Jesus then stands in front of the temple in Jerusalem and he says, tear it down, destroy it, and I'll rebuild it in 3 days. And they said, Jesus, you're crazy. You can't rebuild this in 3 days. It took 47 years to build this. And he wasn't talking about that temple. He was talking about himself. And then on Thursday night, he gathers with his friends. Remember this story? Gathers with his friends, his best friends, his closest people. And they share a meal together. And he serves them. He washes their feet. He reminds them that this God stuff is about serving others and loving others. And then he essentially says to them, look, I'm about to be killed because I've gone against the powers one too many times. This is where the whole thing is headed. And then what happens on Friday? Yeah, Friday, he's crucified. He's murdered on a Roman execution stake by the Romans, a Roman execution stake that we now call a cross. And you know in that moment, the crowds had to be like, are you serious? His people, are you serious? This is how it's going down? We thought it was going to go down differently. We thought you would at some point turn the story, and now you're dead hanging on a cross. And then Friday, he's in a dark tomb. Saturday, day 2, he's in a dark tomb. What happens on day 3? Christ is risen. The tomb is empty. Now here's how Luke's gospel tells the story. The empty tomb story, an Easter story, a resurrection story. It's told in all 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I held up 5 fingers, but I meant 4. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Here's how Luke tells the story. Check it out. Listen to where the hope is found. It's subtle. Very early in the morning on the first day of the week, the women went to the tomb, bringing the fragrant spices they had prepared because they were looking for a dead body. And this was ancient Jewish custom to prepare a dead body with fragrant spices. They found, too much coffee. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they didn't find the body of the Lord Jesus. They didn't know what to make of this. Suddenly, 2 men were standing beside them in gleaming bright clothing. The women were frightened and bowed their faces toward the ground. But the men said to them, why do you look for the living among the dead? He isn't here, but has been raised. Remember what he told you while still in Galilee? Now I'm skipping a few verses. The men go back and tell the women what has just the women go back and tell the men what has just happened. We pick up at verse 11. But they did not believe the women because their words seemed like nonsense. There are all kinds of sermons in that verse, by the way, especially for this culture. Peter, however, got up and ran to the tomb. Bending over, he saw the strips of linen lying by themselves, and he went away, wondering to himself what had happened. Do you know, in every story of an empty tomb or resurrection in the Gospels, no one, except for these two angelic beings, no one said, well, yeah, of course he isn't here. Of course he isn't here. He's risen just like he said he would do. No one said that. The story of new life was accompanied by fear, terror, silence. In fact, Luke ends his story with, then Peter saw the empty tomb, and he went home and he wondered to himself what had just happened. Because the truth is, new life can be kind of confusing, can't it? And when the women went and told Peter and the others, the text says they were skeptical, that they regarded their message as nonsense. And the Greek word there is this word leros, and it's where we get the word delirious. They thought the women were delirious. No one expected resurrection. So 2,000 years later, why did this story endure? That's the best question we can ask of the Easter story. Why did this story endure? And is it because it speaks to us exactly where we are today? Because if we're honest, we don't expect resurrection either, do we? I mean, when things are falling apart, we don't expect new life. And in your earliest moments of new life, think about it. In your earliest moments of new life, it can all seem a bit delirious, can it? It can all seem confusing. It can leave you wondering, even in the midst of new life, what in the heck just happened? And my brothers and sisters, embrace those moments. Because what I can tell you is that is where God is doing God's best work. And think for a moment about all the moments of new life that you've experienced. For those of you in recovery, think about your first day being sober. Think about your early days in recovery, your early days of sobriety. Yeah. You probably weren't like, all right, God, let's do this because I'm ready for you to make all things new. Nah. You were scared. You wanted the pain to stop. You wanted the darkness to end. You couldn't even fathom what new life looked like. You couldn't fathom the thought of things being made new. You didn't have a concept for that. You just wanted the pain to stop. I mean, I remember driving up to my first 12-step meeting in my Toyota pickup truck. My hands are clasped on the wheel, and I'm shaking. And I'm saying, God, please don't make me go in here. Please, there's got to be another way besides this. I don't want to go in and face them. I don't want to face this. And I just wanted the pain to stop. I wanted to stop hurting the people that I loved the most. And on some of those days, I would come home and I would say to Tammy, man, I don't know what happened, but it just feels like I'm dying. And y'all do know that is precisely the place where Easter happens. Right there in the midst of death and darkness and the questions and the despair, resurrection comes along and says, hold on. The story might not be over. Don't let go yet. A new thing might be coming. Death and despair do not have the final word. Hold on. The story isn't over. And see, listen, if you're sitting here tonight thinking, yeah, but Pastor, see, you don't get it. Because, see, I don't really believe in resurrection. I just don't believe in resurrection. Yes, sometimes I don't either. Can we just be honest about that? Sometimes I don't either. Yeah, because see, I can buy into the same cynicism and hopelessness that you buy into. I can buy into the lie that this is just the way it is and nothing's ever going to change and this is life. Now you might be sitting here saying, no, Pastor, you really don't get it. I really can't go there intellectually. I cannot buy into the idea of dead people coming back to life because see, in my world, when people die, they generally stay dead and they don't come back to life. I can't intellectually go there. All right, I'll hang out with you there. I'm with you. But maybe you're asking a bad question. And remember, when we ask bad questions, we consistently get bad answers. The question isn't, do you believe in bodily resuscitation? I'll say this every Easter. It is not about bodily resuscitation, it's about resurrection. Because, see, it's not a story about resuscitation. It's a story about resurrection, and the two are very different. The first one is boring. It's just about the old thing coming back to life. It's about things going back to the way they used to be. But the second one, resurrection, that's about a whole thing being made new again. And that is fascinating. Because you really don't want resuscitation, right? I mean, I know when you're in the middle of it, when things are falling apart in your life, when your heart's breaking into a million pieces, when you've got all the questions, you want to cry out to God and say, God, I just want things to go back to the way they used to be. I wish things were go back to the old way. That's what I want. But that's not really what you crave, is it? What you crave is resurrection. For things to be made new, a breakthrough, one that starts with death and darkness, but then bursts forth new life. It's those moments where you say to yourself, new life here? New life in this darkness? In this moment? Not a chance. You might not be able to imagine it. You might not be able to grasp it. You might have so many questions, and that is precisely the place where Easter happens. So, my brothers and sisters, are you open to it? Are you open to it? Because sometimes hope is quiet. It's subtle. But pay attention. Hope is patient. And if you let it, it will anchor you. It will anchor you in the midst of the storm. Why did this story endure? 2,000 years later, why did it endure? When you find yourself assuming that it's over, that it's lost, gone, broken, and you swear to yourself things could never be put back together again, resurrection comes along and says, hang on. Things might just be getting started. It might start with death and darkness, but the story isn't over because death and darkness do not have the final word. So I want you all to take a moment. In fact, take 60 seconds and engage this question. Because sometimes we're good at finding hope a long time ago. We can point back to years ago. Where did you find hope in the last 48 hours? Subtle moments of hope. And don't stop there. And y'all listen, if you're online and you want to put a comment in or a phrase, boil it down to one word or one phrase, a couple words. And how can you be subtle hope for others? Not in a distant future, but in the next 48 hours. Tonight, tomorrow, the next day, how can you be a presence of hope for others? A presence of resurrection, new life? Take a moment and reflect on that question, and we'll see you in 60 seconds. All right, welcome back. And I'll say it again this week. I know 60 seconds is a short time to reflect on things like subtle hope and new life and resurrection. So revisit it. later this week. Revisit those questions. Where are you experiencing hope? Where can you be hope for others? All right, y'all, I want to introduce you to Lindsay Rainwater. Lindsay and her husband, Jeremy, have been part of this community for the last several months during the pandemic. Y'all are pandemicers. We have some of you in this community who are pandemicers. Raise your hand if you're new to Free during the pandemic. Half of this room. And I know a lot of you online. So we're glad to have you pandemicers. Lindsay is going to share with us some of her story of hope and the things that keep her experiencing hope anew, because it's not just a one-time thing. It's something we keep on experiencing, resurrection in our life and God's work in our life. It's not a one-time thing. It's ongoing. She's going to talk to us about things like addiction and eating disorders. And, well, let's just welcome Lindsay, and then we'll get into it. How's that? Y'all help me welcome Lindsay Rainwater. On it. Don't spin. Should I scoot up? It's like it's your first time on a bar stool. And we know that ain't the truth.
Like this bar stool.
Okay.
We're on.
All right, Lindsay. First, 10th year of sobriety. Mama, wife, CEO of, say the name because I'm going to screw it up.
WIFA, the Women in
WIFA.
Fitness Association.
Yes, Women in Fitness Association. I put it on the Facebook post and in the email, so y'all might have seen that. Thank you for joining us. And we had, man, I wish, you know what would have been great is if our conversation was recorded when we talked earlier this week. That could have been the conversation.
That would have been good.
So we're just going to redo that whole thing
I
and
hope
act like
so.
it's our
We'll
first
see.
time.
We'll see.
Now, so let's start with this. I want people to hear from you. What's the thing that always works for you to keep experiencing new life? Because sometimes, as we know, in recovery, things can get old, boring. We think we've got it nailed, and it ain't true. How do you keep experiencing it?
Well, first, I just want to acknowledge that I'm nervous, which means I care a whole lot. So, just going to say that. Presence. And what I mean by that for me is how do I bring my thoughts to right here, right now, this moment? And it has everything to do with if I'm out in the future or I'm behind myself, I'm not available. I'm totally unavailable, because if my thoughts are filled with the constant chatter that it used to be like when I was actively in addiction, I wasn't available to be of service to the life that was right ahead of me, right in front of me. So like if we were having a conversation, everything going on between my ears had everything to do with playing out what was going to happen next in service of the addiction that was running my life. And so if I can be present, and what does that look like? Like, how do you be present? Well,
Yeah, break that down for us, because we always hear that, the power of presence. And it's totally true. What does it mean, though?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what works. And I have no idea what I said the other day. I'm going to say what I'm thinking about right now.
Say it.
Okay.
I'll correct you if you get it wrong.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. Just
I don't
kidding.
know. Well, I pause, and that's something that I learned in 12-step meetings, and it's something that I never learned growing up that I'm going to make sure my kids understand. Pause and breathe. And if I breathe, like really breathe, not like, but like really close my eyes and really completely gain access to my core and breathe 3 full times, it completely resets my body chemistry. I'm a completely different person than I was 3 breaths prior to that. And that brings me right here, right now. And if I can pause long enough in that moment to literally be in that breath, then it gives me a chance to start anew.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about, in your addiction, how anxiety and worry we're kind of taking over, and I want people to hear this because Tammy shared with me something really interesting this week. She was talking to a friend of hers who's in healthcare, the healthcare industry, and they said the number one thing they are seeing through this pandemic, you know what the number one addiction is? Biggest wait list, I should say. The biggest wait list is eating disorders. Eating disorders. You have a story around this. Can you share with people,
yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
walk us through?
Totally. It was so I have a lot of trauma in my high school years, a lot of sexual trauma. And early in my teens, I started looking for an outlet to process that, not having a safe place to process that, or at least at the time I felt like was safe. And so the first place I went was controlling food, distorted relationships with food. And you know, it's interesting. I was in the car today. It's when I got really quiet, babe. I went back to age 17 and I had a total flashback to a story that happened when I was in my eating disorder. And I want to tell it because it's such a perfect example of this.
Yeah.
So here's what it looked like. And I hope someone can relate to this because I want you to feel like, oh God, that's exactly what I do. And what I'm telling you is there's hope on the other side of it. So I was at work. They brought in pizza. And I had already done the math on how much I was going to eat that day. Anybody that's ever had anorexia knows exactly what I'm talking about. I'd already worked out, I'd already ran, I already lifted, and I knew how many calories I was willing to eat that day because I was in deprivation mode. Like I wasn't willing to eat more than 500 calories a day, and I did the math, and I wasn't going to be able to eat the pizza. So I had it worked out. This is how active addiction showed up in my life.
Yeah.
I had it worked out in my head that a certain number of fat burners and a certain number of laxatives would like equal out half the pizza, and then if I ran a little later. And so I remember sitting at my desk at 17 years old, doing the math and secretly calculating. That was back in the day where we had film bottles. You remember, like actual rolls of film? And I used to hide like laxatives and Metabolife 356 in those little film containers in my purse. And I knew how many a day I could take and still not shake in meetings. But it was this like anxiety, worry cocktail of what I was going to have to do to be able in my mind to make that piece of pizza okay. And that's what anorexia looked like in my life, is it was this constant, and I would write it all down and calculate it, and that was way before iPhone, so I was writing it in a little notebook and that kind of thing. But active addiction and an eating disorder completely robs you of your ability to be present. For me, just as much as active alcoholism, because it's everyday stuff. We're going to go have a piece of pizza in the break room with our friends. No, we're not. Because I got to figure that out first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I laugh because, just last night when we were at dinner, I was telling my mom and Joe and Tammy, we were talking about the language of the obsession was lifted. Yeah. And for me, it was immediate when I got sober for real. Not when I dried out for 5 months and I went back, and the obsession, of course, wasn't lifted. But the obsession of alcohol was lifted in my life, and that's a miracle because the obsession is miserable. I mean, so I hope y'all understand that when we're talking about addiction, that's what we're talking about, this obsession that you can't get away from. Your mind is held captive. Now, Lindsay, you also told me that when your mind is held captive in those moments, that's how you know it's an indicator of new life being needed.
Yes.
And so what do you do in those moments? Walk through that
Should
with
I
us.
tell the story about reading the books to my kids?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, anybody that has little kids. So I've been sober for a minute, and by the grace of God, I've done enough work around my eating disorder that I'm also free of that. It's all about remission, folks. So I do stuff every single day to stay in that headspace. And I know if the chatter, what it felt like when I was counting the Metabolife, right? I know when I'm eking close to that kind of thing, if there's mental chatter about something else. So what might that be? I don't know. The grocery list, the outfit I think I need to have for the thing, the earrings that are going to complete the outfit. Like, you name it. I can make up some really cool shit to distract myself from being present. Right? Mm-hmm. And really all that is it's just distance between me and my higher power, or me and being useful to you, or whatever it is. So here's what that looks like. My two little boys, almost 4, almost 2, They love stories. Like if I would read them 10 stories every night, they would just be over the moon. I read them a couple, but
I
we
think
gotta
Jeremy
have a
should read
limit.
the other 8.
He does, is the thing. He's magical. So
Just one.
just one, yeah. So I know if I'm spiritually fit because when I get done with the book, I know what the book was about. Does anyone relate to this? So you read something and you have no idea what you just read because you are somewhere else, the
Yeah.
whole story. So all of a sudden I'm like, go, dog, go. Where was I just now? I was in the King Soopers app, getting groceries ready, prepping for Easter. So just because I'm not active and I'm not counting calories, I'm not trying to like figure out how many pieces of cake I get to have because I went on a run, that's not it anymore. It's like the obsession of my life and how do I stay out of the control game of life.
Yeah. So, and how does that bring new life for you? Like, so what does if Lindsay were to talk about resurrection, new life, the new thing God is doing in your life? What does that look like? I mean, how do you describe that? And I want people to hear this too. You said that the way recovery for you identified a higher power, it liberated you from childhood religion. Now that is fascinating. What do you mean by that? Childhood religion and higher power liberating you from that.
Yeah.
Walk through those concepts with us.
Yeah. So I ended up in a little program called Alcoholics Anonymous because I couldn't stop drinking. And I'm not saying that lightly. I mean, that's life or death for me. And I was introduced to the 12 steps in the recovery program, and I had no idea that world existed. And what I love about the concepts there is I was introduced to the concept of a higher power of my understanding. And at the time, highly encouraged, like my creation. And it liberated me of when I grew up, and my parents, like, it's not that they were malicious people, but the way that I was raised and the way that our family worked is it was all hardwired around our church. And there was one option and one way, and the school was that way, and everything was that way. And so I was constantly feeling like I got left out of the rest of the conversation that everyone else had, and that I got sent off to college, and there was a whole realm of life I was unaware of. And then you ice that cake with trauma around a lack of sex education, really, if you want to talk about why that happened. And so a lot of resentment started to form around that upbringing. And so when I got the opportunity to paint the sky god and make that up, and then get in touch with something that I felt inside of me, and then the outpour became a spiritual way of life, that was nothing like what I had experienced growing up. And it was a reinvention of a concept that I thought I knew what it meant, but I had no idea what God meant. Now, today, it's this ever-evolving, me remaining curious about mostly doesn't make any sense. It's just a felt experience that often comes through music or nature or my kids, or when I can get quiet long enough, an experience that shows me a glimmer.
Yeah. One thing you said the other day when we met, and I love this because I think it's so Eastery of you to say this, that it's actually raised more questions for you. Absolutely. And this is a good thing. Like sometimes religion, by the way, if you're here at Free and this is your home, questions. We dig questions. Questions are totally welcome here. We thrive on questions. But sometimes religion teaches us that be religious enough. Yeah, don't ask the questions, and you'll get all the answers anyway. I mean, you have all the answers. All you got to do is read the book, and there's all the answers. It's a guidebook. I mean, BS, right? Questions are good. And that, like the Easter story, think back to the Easter story. They had questions. They went back home and wondered what had happened. In fact, later in the Gospels, when they were standing on the mountain and the risen Christ came to meet them, they were filled with questions. Fear was part of it. Terror, silence. Like, it wasn't filled with like Easter egg hunts and parties and celebrations, right? Like, tell us some of that.
Yeah, so I am definitely a searcher and a seeker, and my every single day is an opportunity for me to explore. I use the placeholder higher power because I like to be able to talk about my relationship with my God in a way that feels really, really neutral to you. And depending on the setting I'm in, sometimes I will say God. But I'm very conscious of the fact that my gateway came through that language. That's how I started to heal my relationship with a larger power than myself, was by thinking of it in a grand sweeping way.
Yeah.
And as far as like, I wrestle with religion still, conceptually, literally, the literal, and metaphorically, rock on. And I think, it's an ongoing journey for me.
Yeah. So what do you say, Lindsay? We'll wrap things up here, but what do you say to people who are struggling, not just, we talk about this all the time, but struggling to not pick up another drink, not pick up a drug, but, and that's important. If you have something to say about that, say it. But what do you say to those who are like, man, I just can't do the God stuff. This, even the resurrection story of dead rising, I can't go there. And what I've learned is, for so many people, they say I can't go there, so recovery doesn't work for them because we get closed off to any sort of higher power in our lives. And in my experience, recovery doesn't work that way. What do you say?
Does anybody like music? It's music, okay. So for me, for the first, I'd say 6 months of my sobriety, I'd say music was my higher power. And I found God through the DJ Cascade. I mean that, like,
it's beautiful. Yeah.
No, but really, Cascade dropped an album the same year that I got sober, and I will never forget the way that the Colorado skyline started to look to me. I'd be coming home from a 12-step meeting, getting ready to go back to work, and it was like all of a sudden the mountains were just there, and the lights came on. And so what I would say is, like, if you have trouble with the concept of God and that's holding you back from recovery, then it's not going to be about God for a while. Like, just get your butt in recovery. Like, surrender to the fact that whatever your issue is, you can't stop drinking. You can't stop using. You can't stop counting calories. You can't stop binging at night. You can't stop obsessing about the ex. You can't stop whatever that thing is that's putting space between you and feeling hope. Throw your hands up and get out of the game of trying to figure out what the solution is before you even surrender to the damn thing.
Yeah.
And then if it is the God thing, like if you get in a meeting or you get here or wherever you are and you feel uncomfortable about that, there's a lot of ways to remedy that. And if you can just quiet your mind around any ideas that you have about it and just latch on to the fact that there's something out there bigger than you that cares about you, that's got you, let it be my words that carry that for you. It doesn't have to be a belief in something or a bio. It doesn't have to be any of that. And then just watch and see what happens when you actually surrender to that thing and try to stop.
Whew. Thank you for that, Lindsay. These are not like these aren't light topics we're talking about here. No. We could actually have a whole evening discussion on this right here. What that stuff, what surrender means, what finding a concept of God looks like in your life. So listen, if you're watching right now, or even if you're here live, Lindsay will interact with you online. So if you want to ask her questions, you can do that there on the Facebook thread. I guess you need to jump on Facebook even if you're on YouTube. But if you have comments for Lindsay, questions for Lindsay, she will interact with you all night long. Well, probably not all night. You're probably going to sleep tonight, right?
Yeah, I have kids. I'm not going to.
She might even get to you tomorrow morning.
I will interact.
Yes.
I will interact.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight, Lindsay. Can we give Lindsay a round of applause? Thank you. Can I hand that to you, Brittany? And hand that to Danny. Thank you, Lindsay. Now you can go sit by your hubby again. We're going to do some heartaches. Because listen, y'all, the way we end in this community every week is we end with heartaches, because we don't ignore the hard stuff. We don't ignore the heavy stuff. Now, we also don't start with that stuff. We start with the celebrations. We start with the joy, because it can be easy. Look at your life. It can be easy to start with the heavy. But we don't ignore the heavy, because the truth is it is too heavy for you to carry alone. So in this community, we carry burdens together. Now, in order for us to know what burdens we're carrying together, you got to get vulnerable again. Put them in the comments here if you're in the house. Say them live, because we want to pray for you throughout the week. We want to lift you up. We have a prayer team. Jason, thank you for being here, and others on the prayer team. We have a prayer team that connects with you throughout the week, and we pray for y'all. And I know this community, I've said this before, I'll say it again, this community connects better than any community I've seen, because you all know the power of lifting one another up. You know the power of a simple Facebook message or text or phone call. So keep doing those things. And listen, I want you to just take 3 minutes and give us the heartaches. Tell us the hard things you're dealing with so we can lift one another up in this community. Hope is sometimes subtle, and it comes from lifting one another up. So take 3 minutes, and we'll be back.
shift he was on was last week, Friday night to Saturday morning. It's 6 fentanyl overdoses. There's a new strand of fentanyl that's on the street, came out about 2 weeks ago. It's a synthetic fentanyl.
Hey, did you all hear that in the back? A new strain of fentanyl, a synthetic, what did you call it? A fentanyl is on the streets, and Lou was sharing this with us. His friend, who's a firefighter, had 6 overdoses in one night. Oh, just tonight. Oh, just in one night, yeah. So, yeah, y'all, you know these hit Denver every now and again, and it's deadly. You don't know what you're getting. So, are we back on live? Sorry, y'all, who are joining us online. We're talking about some heartaches here, but here in Denver, a new line of fentanyls hit the streets, and overdoses running rampant. So, y'all, be careful out there. Sorry, Tammy.
Hello.
Join me. You know, she got me today. for my birthday. Can I tell them? It's just kind of cool. One of those soda fizzer things. It makes bubbly waters
He's a
because we drink
bubbly
so much
lover.
bubbly water. That's not a heartache. That's a joy. But I just thought I'd say that. It was fun to wake up to that this morning. We're going to have another one tonight. All right, y'all. We had... it's my birthday. It's my birthday. We are going to get wild tonight. Bubbles.
Danny, do you want to take over?
Listen, it's we're gonna do some heartaches together. There's I know it's out there, and we have this online community who's with us. So let's read some of their heartaches that they want to share with this community. You can go first.
Mary. All right, Mary says prayers for my friend Ryan S.'s mom. She is in terrible pain. Came out of the hospital and off chemo. We'll be praying and grateful to have you here tonight, Mary.
Yeah, prayers for Ryan S.'s mom. Thank you for sharing that, Mary. Elizabeth Scott says, just missing Maddie a lot tonight. It's hard to not have your kid around and not speaking to you. Elizabeth, prayers for you during this time of heartache of not having your kid with you. Prayers.
Brian O'Brien, my sister in recovery, had a death in the family. Her grandfather, who she was close to.
Prayers for her. Thank you, Brian, for lifting that up. Natalie says, constant fear of relapse. It is constant and staggering. Natalie, prayers for what you're going through. I know I talked to you earlier this week, and hey, many, many prayers and good vibes and healing sending to your family. Thanks for sharing that with this community.
Chris in the back says, please pray for my brother Ken in the program. Intestinal cancer is taking a huge toll after multiple surgeries and CBAG issues. He just had another surgery. Prayers.
Heavy stuff. Thank you for sharing that with us, Chris. Prayers for Ken. Let's do one more, shall we? And by the way, just because we do one more doesn't mean you can't keep these coming throughout the week. We'll follow the thread and add you to the prayer list. Samantha says, just trying to make some sense of the way it all went down, past relationships. I want to have hope, and if there's any chance of that, I believe it's here. Any helpful words are appreciated. Sterling. I'm assuming this is Sterling joining us. Sterling, good to have you here, brother. We'll... Yeah, you're bringing up the hard stuff, right? This is why this community exists. We do some hard stuff, and we find hope in the midst. Man, I hope you have close comrades in your journey. Call one of us here. In fact, there'll be some guys here that will put their phone number in the thread, and you can call them, I promise, at any time, and they will get in touch with you. I promise you. Sterling, glad you're here, brother. Thank you for lifting that up.
We have the prayer team contact, too. That information available on the app, and also prayer team at freespiritualcommunity.com.
Yep. Send an email. Thank you, Tammy, for always joining me up here. It's fun to have you here. Listen, y'all, before we do close things down on this Easter night, it's kind of weird celebrating Easter on Saturday night, isn't it? But we're early. That's how we do things here. Frontsies. We're doing Frontsies with Easter. Hey, the wagon is a central image in this community, and on top of the wagon, we have this donation box, which is an old Kleenex box that holds Kleenex. But we actually have other donation boxes scattered throughout the premises of Free, and it sits on a wagon because the wagon is how we do life here. We don't kick the wounded. You fall off the wagon, we don't kick the wounded. We lift one another back on. It's how we do things. What do we say here at Free? We don't do shame ever. We don't believe in shame. Shame doesn't work. It doesn't transform lives. It never wins. So one of the ways we keep this mission here thriving at Free is by your generous giving. Thank you to all of you who give generously. It makes a huge difference in this community. It is. Again, it's what keeps the mission of breaking the silence of addiction and creating space for healing, recovery, and spiritual connection. It's what keeps the mission thriving. So thank you for your generous giving. And just to remind you, if you don't put money in the donation boxes, there's still 3 other ways to give. And you'll see them on the screen in just a moment. You can download the app, the free app. It's free. And you can give there. Weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, however you want to do it, or go to the website freespiritualcommunity.com/give. Safe, simple, and secure, or text the number on your screen, and you can text to them, Be the Wagon. It will give you a set of instructions. Your generous giving sustains the mission here at Free. It is so good to be with you all on this Easter Saturday night. where we celebrate new life, even when hope is quiet and patient and subtle. Look for it everywhere this week, because I promise you, like Crystal said in the letter, this is not the end. New life, hope is patient, quiet. It will wait. Let's go out with a prayer, shall we? I invite you to open your hands. It's a sign of new life. I'm sorry. It could be a sign of new life. It's also a sign of letting God in, opening yourself to something new. Are you open to new life? Are you open to God's work around you? So quiet yourself, quiet your inners, and let's pray the Lord's Prayer together. If you don't know it, it's on the screen, and it goes like this. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. My free brothers and sisters, I'll keep it really simple. Happy Easter. We'll see you next time.